Also joining us, we have online participants. So I'd like to say welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. And the reason why we are here today is to explore the question of how to decarbonize domestic shipping and small ports in developing countries, especially small island developing states and least developed countries. And focusing on this question, we will have presentations, panel discussions, and Q&A sessions. Now, the event is 3 hours, and it's broken into 2 parts. During part 1, we'll be focusing into the broader issue around decarbonisation and domestic shipping. And then after the break, in the second half, we'll be focusing more into the technology solutions which are now available, looking at what's practical for application in the developing regions. So we're expected to conclude at 4:45 British Summer Time. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first keynote speaker. It's Mr. Kamal Al-Jamadi, who is the General Manager of Maritime Transport Policies and International Organization Affairs.
Thank you, Anton. Thank you, distinguished guests. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this side event of the IMO Cares project, discussing the critical importance of developing decarbonization efforts in domestic shipping and ensuring developing regions can benefit from tangible technologies. It seems like yesterday that the seed of IMO Cares was first planted. As I stand before you today, I'm amazed to see the fruits of our collective labor beginning to grow. Back in 2021, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia committed its support to a project which sought to address the technology gap between developed and developing countries and the crucial issues of decarbonization. We believe that if we could facilitate collaboration between industry and government, global north and global south, IMO Cares would accelerate the adoption of market-ready, energy-efficient technologies. Through close collaboration between the Transport General Authority and the Department of Partnership and Projects, the IMO Cares project has been implemented through 3 key pillars: the Care Connect, the Global Challenge, and the Care Technology Report. In September 2023, the CARES Connect event provided a platform for donors, technology providers, and beneficiaries to identify readily available decarbonization projects applicable to ports and national shipping industries in developing countries. The discussions provided shipping industry provided valuable insights into the potential partnership which would help beneficiary countries grow their maritime industry sustainably. It was clear that more work needed to be done to raise the profile of innovative technology solutions. Countries still face infrastructural limitations in their maritime industry, and that SIDs and LDCs face unique geographical, financial, and logistic challenges in their decarbonization journeys. However, the CARES Technology Report has been developed by international experts in the field of decarbonization, who analyzed domestic shipping in SIDs, SIDs, and LDCs to identify which green technology are being applied. The effectiveness of these technology and their potential for future application. The importance of this report can be understood. It sheds light on the often overlooked impact of domestic shipping on the emissions and developing countries. It will provide springboard from which decision makers across the globe will be able to make better informed decisions about their decarbonization strategies. And it will play a key role in outlining the necessary financial and regulatory capacity required in implementing such technologies. The third pillar of the IMO CARES project has been the Maritime Technology Global Challenge. It is with great excitement that we will learn more today the winning technology solutions to this ambitious competition. We received 21 proposals from a wide variety of talented technology companies, which is reflective of the respect that the project has granted through the tireless awareness raising campaign of the IMO and the Transport General Authority and the Department of Partnership Projects. The remarkable breadth and depth of the marketable technology solution on offer is immensely encouraging. More recently, in March, MTCC Africa and MTCC Caribbean hosted Women in Maritime Decarbonization workshops, attracting over 300 participants from industry, policy, and academia. These workshops addressed the barrier faced by women in the decarbonization sector, as well as highlighted initiatives to promote women to leadership roles. They identified the need for more partnership, research initiatives, and training programs to empower women. Which brings us to today. This event offers us another wonderful opportunity to review the current status of decarbonization domestic shipping in developing regions, identify challenges, develop opportunities, and set our compass for the journey ahead. It's therefore a pleasure to see so many attendees representing maritime administrations, academia, industry, IMO, and others. Saudi Arabia is privileged once again to have the opportunity to support the IMO and the Department of Partnership and Projects in this IMO CARE projects. IMO CARES is fully aligned with Vision 2030 and the Kingdom's prioritization of maritime innovation and investment. I can assure you that when it comes to paving the way for the future of shipping, the IMO has a willing and enthusiastic long-term partner in Saudi Arabia. On behalf of the Transport General Authority, I would like to thank the immense efforts, particularly of Dr. George Whittaker, the project manager, Anton Rhodes, and all the team of the excellent work that has taken place behind the scenes to make this event possible. I look forward to the fruitful and collaborative discussions that lie ahead. Thank you, and thanks for your patience for my long opening remarks.
Thank you so much. And I'd now like to ask our second keynote speaker, Mr. Joseph Theichel, who is the Director of IMO's Technical Cooperation and Implementation Division, TCID, to provide a few welcome remarks.
Thank you, Anton. Good afternoon to all of you here and also from all around the world who might be observing this meeting here. I'm sure colleagues from Saudi Arabia as well. So Mr. Kamal, my good friend, Mr. Youssef, you here, Anton, and distinguished delegates. Thank you very much for being here. I think Anton gave me a speech, but I decided I'm not going to read because it is going to come from my heart. Because when we coined IMO CARES, a few years back, and it was me and Mr. Essam from Saudi Arabia who are deeply engaged to see how we can actually make a meaningful project that will go in line with IMO's regulatory accelerators, which, as you know, what is happening in IMO, I'm sure all of you are familiar with the whole development in GHG strategy, the regulatory framework as an accelerator going on. At the same time, it is very obvious to see that a lot of countries needing the assistance in developing their capacity when it comes to technologies and infrastructure to catch up or to go along with the regulatory developments. So when we look at it, what is the best way of now intervening when you move into the technology regime? Because traditionally, IMO has been in the area of training mostly and legislative reforms and helping the countries in those areas. But as you know, many countries would go through that steps of initial awareness raising, then the training, then they develop legislation and policies. But there is another steps to go that they do need technologies and infrastructure to implement these regulations and enforce it. So there is this critical gap there where if we haven't done much about it, then we are actually letting a whole group of countries behind. And how do we do that in a bit of an inspirational way? And the idea came, how do we connect the global south and the global north, especially if we were to focus on the seas and LDCs? Because on one side, they're looking for solutions that is appropriate for the region and the countries that are affordable for them. On the other side, there may be solutions out there who are developing such solutions. So how do we connect them? That was the first thing that came to our mind. And that is where the IMO case, the concept emerged. IMO case, as you know, stands for Coordinated Actions to Reduce Emission from Shipping. And I really like the acronym, IMO case. I'm sure you do too. So, then that was a time Saudi Arabia came forward and said, hey, we like this idea. We want to support it. And we want to fund, this part of it. So,
You got hooked by the name.
Well, I can take credit for the name, but no, it was really good because we were looking at who's going to have, because it is a bit of a tricky area when it comes to technologies. Who wants to be the first mover? Who wants to put a bit of a risk money there? Because you never know what is going to happen. But without the kind of that move, that absorbing a bit of the risk, okay, let's try it out. Let's help somebody to make the connection and demonstrate some solutions. It builds the confidence in the receiving end. It proves that solutions are available. So you build the confidence that we can address this issue. And if it is successful, obviously there is also a commercial advantage for whoever is coming forward. And we do need that kind of an ecosystem or the structure to bring more and more solutions to the field. And that is what IMO case is trying to do. It's a very small but very impactful intervention. If successfully, some of the pilots are successful, the whole confidence goes up. And that yes, we can address it. Yes, even SIDS can find some solutions. Yes, this is affordable. A lot of things can come out of it. And from that perspective, I think this is going to be a very catalytic intervention. And we were very happy to do this project in parallel to the GMN, the MTCC network, because they were also there to support if some of these ideas were coming through, so they could also help in terms of implementation or demonstration some of these technologies. So, and having said that, I know Kamal talked all about the whole efforts of the connecting, events that we did. That is just the networking, getting people connected. Then the challenge that we threw out, okay, how many of you need solutions? How many can provide solutions? And it was really good. And thank you all for, kind of coming up with the proposals. And some countries, I witnessed one of those dialogues in one of those connect events, and there was so much of interaction between the beneficiary countries or the stakeholders and the solution providers. And it was really encouraging to see that. So IMO case is, as I said, it's a small start, but it is going to be, and it is a very impactful intervention. And I really would like to thank government of Saudi Arabia for their vision and foresight and saying that, look, we are on board with this, and here is some resources for IMO to go ahead and really helped us in moving ahead. But that is just a one example of what Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been doing with IMO. It's not just this area. There are many other areas that they have come forward, and we look forward to strengthening the partnership with government of Saudi Arabia to do even more. I think I talked a lot. Because one comes from heart, you never stop. Thank you so much, first of all, for all of you for showing an interest, being part of this journey, because we need a lot more of this to find those solutions. And your championing, your initiative is going to be the backbone for, for taking this further. Like to again thank Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia for this wonderful support, and also my colleagues here who have been working very hard, and they are also very inspired by this concept of IMO case, and they have been working tirelessly over these years to bring some really good outcomes. And I'm very happy that this is coming out. And my apologies that I will not be here with you for the next 3 hours because I have another big meeting going on, but I'm the secretary to the TCC. So I will go back to my room whenever it's time convenient. But once again, thank you so much for caring. And just as we care, I know the whole community cares, and that's what IMO cares is about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Joe. And that concludes the opening remarks. So we're now moving into the technical side of the program. So we'll have a presentation from IMO colleague to talk a bit more about the work of IMO Cares. And then we're going to focus on the main outputs from the report that we've heard so much about. So this will be the first presentation talking about what are the results in the reports. So again, thank you to the keynote speakers, and then we can bring the presenters to the stage. So thanks again. Okay, so joining me is Ms. Petra Gassami Ahari to provide an overview on the IMO project. Over to you, Petra. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, colleagues. I know many of you are familiar with IMO Cares, but for those of you who are new to the project, please allow me to make a brief introduction. So IMO Cares, which stands for Coordinated Actions to Reduce Emissions from Shipping, was launched in April 2023 and is funded by the Transport General Authority of Saudi Arabia. The project's broader aim is to accelerate the adoption of energy efficient technologies that are suitable to decarbonize domestic shipping and ports activities. We have 3 primary focus areas. Our goal has been to identify market-ready energy efficient technologies and accelerate their demonstration. We focus on domestic shipping, such as inter-island port and fishing vessels, as well as on port-side technologies, and we support developing countries, specialists in LDCs in Africa and Caribbean. To achieve the main objectives of IMO Cares, we have focused on 3 key actions over the past year. Through the Global Challenge competition, we identified the most suitable low and zero carbon technologies for demonstrations at ports and on domestic vessels. We organize networking events, as Joe has mentioned, to foster collaboration and to directly connect all relevant stakeholders. And we focus on raising awareness, which included developing a report on decarbonization of domestic shipping. I will not talk more about the Global Challenge because that will be focus of our afternoon session. But in terms of our networking efforts, at our Cares Connect event held in September 23, representatives from Africa and Caribbean countries, donors and technology providers came together to explore solutions for maritime GHG reduction, and many ideas and stakeholders groupings from this event have led to pilot demonstration proposals and laid foundation for future projects. Another key action area for CARES has been raising awareness and producing a report on decarbonization of domestic shipping. The report provides an overview of technologies and strategies for decarbonizing domestic shipping in African and Caribbean SIDS and LDCs, and will be officially published in July. We have the report authors here with us today to present the main findings. And I will conclude by mentioning some of the positive outcomes we managed to achieve over the past year. So through the IMO Cares project, we have identified specific regional needs and opportunities for decarbonization in domestic shipping and ports. And in response to those specific needs, we have been building partnerships and identifying the effective solutions that will assist local shipping in reduction of its carbon footprint. We are now in process of developing technology demonstration proposals set to be implemented across Africa and Caribbean next year. Thank you for your attention, and I will now invite my colleagues to share insight from the IMO Cares report on decarbonization of domestic shipping.
Great, thanks, Petra. Thanks so much. Okay, so I'd like to invite Dr. Vakili, who is a research fellow at the University of Southampton and also IMO consultant. You're welcome to sit or stand, Doctor.
I prefer to stand.
Excellent. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have introduction. I am Said Vakili from University of Southampton. It's a great pleasure for me to attend this conference and event to present the results of our study about decarbonization of domestic shipping in Africa and Caribbean region in the company of my colleague, Professor Inz. In the beginning, I would like to highlight that for this study, we consider the domestic ship emission from domestic shipping in Africa. However, for the Caribbean region, we consider regional shipping. It means that shipping which has provides service to the Caribbean region between seas and developing countries in Caribbean region, as well as their domestic vessels. As you know, the emission from the domestic vessel has been underestimated, and it needs further attention in this regard. For calculating the emissions from the domestic vessels, we have a two-way of approach, vessel-way approach, which is around 9% of global CO2 shipping. And the other way of approach is voyage-based allocation, which in addition of the domestic vessels, we have to consider the international shipping, which contribute occasionally meeting ports between two ports in the same country. In this case, the contribution of domestic shipping will be around 26% of global CO2 shipping, which is almost 3 times of the vessel-based allocation. In order for decarbonization of the domestic shipping, we have to consider holistic, systematic, and transdisciplinary approach, and consider the collaboration between different stakeholders, vertically and horizontally. In this study, in addition of the policy measures and regulation which we provided in the conclusion and the recommendation, which has been identified as one of the barriers, the lack of appropriate regulation for decarbonization of domestic shipping, we focus on operational measures, technical measures, as well as we consider port as one of the most important stakeholders in maritime transportation. Appropriate passage planning, power demand, weather routing, speed reduction, just-in-time arrival, and ship handling optimization are among those operational measures that cannot be generalized for all cases, but in some scenarios can be used and be considered for decarbonization of domestic shipping. However, hull and proper cleaning, machinery maintenance are the low-hanging fruits in operational measures that can be considered for decarbonization of domestic vessels, and also economic of scales. In order to reduce the amount of the emissions per unit of the carbon passenger can be taken into consideration, especially for the routes which we have high amount of cargo transportation and passenger transportation. Technical measures play a crucial role and key role, similar to international shipping. Using alternative fuel is the key role for decarbonization of the domestic vessels. We believe that hydrogen, especially with integration with fuel cell and battery, can play a crucial role and important role in the future. However, in maturity of the technology and associated costs should be taken into consideration. Methanol also can play a crucial role. However, LNG and ammonia may not be the good options for decarbonization of domestic shipping. The LNG is more suitable for larger vessels. The retrofitting cost is high, and also it cannot comply fully with well-to-wake requirement of the IMO, and ammonia is due to safety and toxicity exists, and due to safety will not be the good option, as the majority of the domestic vessels are operating near to the port, which they have the high population. I would like to emphasize on the potential of renewable energy. Our study shows that wind associated propulsion system in different types and technologies for different type and size of vessels can play important role for decarbonization. Around 4% can reduce the emissions. In our cases, solar has a limited of the potential. However, in integration with other renewable measures can play a role. And I would like to emphasize about the biofuel. In the short-term measures, biofuel can play a crucial role, an important role. It's a drop-in fuel. We need less retrofitting for the engines, considering the age of the vessels, as well as the bunker fuel infrastructure. However, they are concerned about sustainability of the production of the biofuel and also the competition which exists between between the shipping and other transportation mode, especially aviation, as well as for international shipping and domestic vessels. The electrification, battery, and hybridization play a crucial role for decarbonization of domestic vessels. However, it's hinged to the ports. Ports categories should be changed and mindset should be changed. They have to consider as energy hub in the future, and they have to provide the sustainable infrastructure for decarbonization of the domestic vessels. The port ship interface is very important. They have to provide sufficient bunker fuel infrastructure and also onshore power system to support the electrification of the domestic vessels. However, we have to take this into consideration that the source of onshore power system should be cleaner than source of the vessels, and it's much better that be from the renewable energy. And the other factor that we figure out, especially in these two regions, is that the capacity and the capacity of the national grid should be taken into consideration, and they can have a sufficient capacity to produce the amount of the electricity for charging of the electric vessel. In short term, medium term, maybe we can take into consideration microgrid and smart grid, and also electrification, digitalization, and automation can play important role for facilitating the supply chains and indirectly reduce emissions from the domestic vessel. Appropriate policy and measures from the scheme and speed reductions can be other measures that should be taken into consideration. And I would like to highlight the potential which exists in optimizing hull design and using lighter vessels for the domestic vessels that can reduce the emissions and improve energy efficiency, vehicle improvement, and propulsion improving device and energy saving devices. Next slide, please. This table shows the energy efficiency measures and alternative fuel which has been used in domestic and international. As the table shows that domestic vessels lag behind compared to international shipping in using of alternative fuel and energy efficiency measures. The only technical measures that has been used more in domestic due to nature of the domestic vessels and also limitation which exists from the technology is electricity and the battery, which has been almost 2 times more used in domestic vessel compared to international vessel. Thank you very much. I give the floor to my colleague, Professor Ansa, for continuing.
Is to be able to obtain sufficient data on fleet. So we have actually looked into some database, especially considering the deployment, which means the ships are operating. According to this, Africa region only 6 LDCs has got 319 ships working only in domestic work. As you can see, more than half of it is taxed. This is what we have encountered. Most of the domestic ships are taxed. Meanwhile, some other commercial ships also exist. We have developed some estimation of the GHG emissions. So in Africa region, it's about 500,000 tons of carbon dioxide. Next, please.
Next.
In Caribbean region, we have taken a different route, not only looked into domestic ships, but also regional traffic between the 6 and LDCs only. So we have excluded the journeys to Latin America, South America, or North America outside the 6 and LDCs. In this case, 44% of the ships is still taxed. But when we look at the emissions, due to the longer distances, emissions between the tugs and ferries are in similar quantities. This modeling was really based on to test out some of the measures and to see their effectiveness. We have encountered the electrification is one of the most influential emission reduction measure in domestic shippings, both in Africa, in Caribbean. When we look at that, we have also looked into the source of the electricity. In Africa region, some of the states and LDCs has got hydroelectric power. Meanwhile, Caribbean is mainly fossil fuel. So if we do direct electrification based on these electricity sources, about 25% of the reduction is possible by the electrification of tugs and ferries. If it is combined with the production of the renewable energy from solar or wind, in this case, electrification of the tugs and ferries would result more than 50% reduction of GHGs in both regions. So in this context, it's not so easy to isolate maritime decarbonization from the sources of energy in these regions. So our suggestion was mainly based on renewable energy sources combined with either through ports or directly into other alternative fuels to reach more than 50% of the decarbonization in this region. We also look some technological measures. As the tugs and ferries are the main source of the emissions, application of propulsion improvement devices or wind-assisted propulsion has got some effect, but it's not as influential as electrification. We also did a questionnaire on both regions to find out what is the perception of the barriers for decarbonization. So we have identified the most influential ones and the secondary ones. Then we categorize them in order. In the first order, it was limited access to capital, perception of the both regions. Secondly, immature technology. Thirdly, lack of trained manpower. And fourthly, the weak legislation and enforcement. As you can see, the main barriers seen as capital, technology, manpower, and legislation. So the main barriers covering all areas. In short, recommendations. The role of governments in decarbonization of the coastal shipping, domestic shipping in both regions cannot be done without the maritime administrations and governmental regulations. The support of the sector by reducing the risk of investment, raising finance for decarbonization of domestic shipping are crucial. The capacity building and research development is required to adopt these measures. Enhancing energy efficiency is indispensable as both regions, alternative fuels will be difficult, expensive, and the least spending through the energy efficiency is required. Increasing renewable energy utilization is the key issue, combined with ports on onshore power supply and the ports' involvement both on alternative fuels and electricity power supply will be quite crucial, and establishment of green corridors within the region or within one country can be done easier in comparison with international shipping. That's the brief of our work.
Great. Thank you so much to both presenters. So there was a huge amount of information that was condensed into the presentation, and I think both presenters really been working solidly on this for a long period, and the results are very much appreciated, I think. What we get from the presentation is a picture of what's happening in terms of emissions from domestic vessels in these regions. We get a picture of what are the potential solutions and how impactful those solutions can be. And of course, what are the types of barriers that we have to overcome if we're going to get to the solution. So it was a big topic, it was two big regions, but you've managed to condense it and present it in a way that I think gives us all a much clearer picture. So big appreciation to the presenters. Many of these points that were raised during the presentations will be discussed in the panel discussions now. So we'll move straight in to the panel discussion. And I'd like to invite the representatives from the NTCCs to come up and join the panel discussions. So we have representation from NTCC Africa, NTCC Caribbean, NTCC Pacific, Latin America, and Asia. So I'd like to invite colleagues, please come up. And for this discussion, I hand over to my colleague, Captain Singh, who will lead the panel discussion. Over to you, Captain.
Thank you, Anton, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope it's going good so far, and I have full confidence in my panel that they'll shake you out of after lunch period, right, with their discussions. So very briefly, first, as you know, I'm Captain Singh. I'm a technical officer now with the TCID and the project. I'll request my panel members to have a very brief introduction of yourself for the audience. Maybe we can start from there.
Thank you very much, Captain. Okay. Thank you very much, Captain, for the introduction and being a very able moderator. My name is Lydia Ngugi from MTCC Africa, and I'm happy to be here with you and share the region's experience. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vivian Ramrat Parashram. I'm Program Leader of Maritime Studies at the University of Trinidad and Tobago and also the head of MTCC Caribbean.
Hi, I'm Runway from Shanghai Maritime University as well as the MPCC. Nice to meet you all.
Hello, good day to everybody here. My name is Evelyn Vargas from the NTCC Latin America. Thank you for inviting us to be part of this great event, and also to all seafarers, have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Farah Nisesi-Kiriwa. You can call me Farah. I'm actually representing NTCC Pacific. I'm working with the Pacific community back in Fiji. And thank you to the organizers for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And as you can see, panel members each bring a wealth of expertise from their respective area. We are aware that in international shipping, we have very significant measures, or let's say strides towards decarbonization, but domestic shipping, especially in developing states, as we saw in the presentations just before the panel, especially SIDS and LDCs, they are, these are the countries which are grappling with very unique challenges and very unique issues, and which certainly hinders the progress on decarbonization. So I will like to hear from starting from the basic, at least for the benefit of the audience. I would like input. Maybe we can start from Africa and move along the table very quickly. Now, normally when we are dealing with these, there's a basic issue, and we saw that in the presentation also. How do you define or identify domestic shipping? So do you have a specific definition within your region, or there is some like boundary lines you're moving with? Because that will be helpful as we move forward on these projects. So maybe we can start with Africa.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sonjit, for that question. And as you are asking the question, I just remember that on the 21st of May, there was the advisory opinion from the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea that gave the mandate for having state obligation towards climate change related issues. So this means that there is state responsibility to look at some of these aspects. Therefore, with regard to the definition, also important to note that the Africa region has a lot of government-owned vessels, and as well as port development is owned by the governments ports are owned by the government. And when it comes to the infrastructure of the ports, and then also when it comes to the pilot boats at the port, as well as the tugboats, these are predominantly government domain. In terms of the definition, that's what sticks out like a sore thumb, that it is owned by government and it is looked upon through port infrastructure and as well as the domestic vessels like the ferries and the others that I have highlighted. Thank you.
Caribbean, yes.
Thank you. With respect to domestic shipping, we don't have a formal definition of it in our legislation. It is treated with respect from the perspective of GHG emissions. There is a little reference to it in the narrative for a national action plan under the UNFCCC convention, but specific to implementation of maritime conventions, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of defining domestic shipping. From the perspective of administrations, quantifying and determining what actually constitutes domestic shipping is straightforward. The operational definition should be, as the professors highlighted, should be based on the vessels that are trading within your maritime zones. And not just your territorial waters, but within your exclusive economic zones as well. Within the Caribbean region, you know, we have extensive extraction of fossil fuels. A lot of that takes place in deep water, and those emissions are not really quantified in terms of domestic shipping. So it's an evolving definition in the Caribbean, and one that has to be standardized for us to actually build out projects that can actually address it. But it's evolving based on the continued conversation.
Thank you. I think that, I mean, the first 2 points are quite considerable, because if you will see in international shipping, a lot of clusterization or categorization of shipping is either based on size, based on voyage based, where they're trading, or sometimes maybe the operations also, right? So it is important that especially these, SIDS and LDCs clearly, it may not fit that, okay, one definition that if you are within my territorial waters, it means you're domestic. Maybe the economy is such that they are going outside that, but still the main impact is on that member state. So they need to be considered for the purpose of certain rules and regulations as domestic voyages. So maybe this is something which each one of us needs to work with our respective member states in the region. I mean, other panel members, maybe Pacific, you want to add, because I know there is a lot of domestic shipping in Pacific region.
So I just wanted to actually set the scene first. In the Pacific, we have a lot of people that have origins in the islands, in the maritime islands. So it's actually important that they actually travel on the boats back to the islands and back to the urban centers. So in setting that particular scene, it's also important that they whatever they transport, so it's passengers, cargo, and the types of cargo that they actually bring from the urban centers to the island, like building materials and groceries and all that. But it also, the definition of domestic shipping is also centered around the type of routes that's actually being serviced, whether it's economical for the vessel operators and the passengers and those that are commuting, or whether it's uneconomical. Uneconomical type of route. So basically, that actually dictates the way domestic shipping is actually defined within the Pacific region. And also the point that I wanted to make was, at the moment there has to be in the Pacific, they have to strike a balance between efficiency and effectiveness of service with bringing in the transition to decarbonization. So at some point, it's more important that services are being provided to and from urban centers to the maritime islands, as opposed to bringing in greenhouse gas emissions reduction measures within the Pacific. So that's a balance that has to be struck when we are talking about domestic shipping.
Thank you, Brian. Maybe I mean, it's also an interesting aspect to see. I mean, especially again when we're looking at SIDS, because it is, we talk about maritime issues, but it is not a maritime issue. It's a development issue, right? So it's not outside of the development agenda. But it means within just three definitions, we can see, each region is very unique. And maybe here I will start with maybe Asia first, right? Then I want to hear from everyone very briefly. Now, if you have a definition already in mind, how you think your domestic fleet is unique and different from other regions? Because again, we may not have one solution which will fit all. So it's important to think that what would work in your area. So how you say, like Pacific, we already heard that it means they have, if you divide the domestic fleet further, it can be two categories. One is commercial operations, bringing in groceries, food security, all that. And then there are some subsidized, or maybe government has to run that services, even if it does not make economical sense. That is uniqueness of their region. So maybe I can hear from other four regions very quickly, what is the uniqueness of your domestic fleet? Okay, maybe start from Latin America.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, first I have to mention each country have a specific situation. Example, Pacific, Asia, Caribbean, and Africa have different situations. For us in Latin America, also we have to look at what the situation that we have. First of all, we have to thinking about every country has to adopt national action plan. If you adopt your national action plan, you identify what is your domestic fleet according with your operation that you are doing. If you're an establishment this, you cannot go way forward, because this is the first step for all countries have to establish what you are doing in your country. After that, you have example, you take some many examples that we can use it to develop the national plans to involve maritime administration, to involve environmental, ministry, all authorities that are involved in the operations of the commercial, that another situation involving ferries, tugboats, all kind of operation that you are doing in your country. After that, I think this is a many information that you have to take it GSG reductions strategy in your country. You after that have to make it different policies and adopted policies and implemented that policies to use a GSG reduction. Also, that important that we have to increase the data, because all the operation that we have require a data. And the data is a big value that we need. This is something like I have to mention.
So, if I may, before going to Asia, so what I think for the benefit of audience and even myself included in there, when you are referring to uniqueness, maybe it's a good idea to highlight, as Arvind highlighted. So if you make a regulation, you make a national action plan, but how do you force it? And whether, so if your uniqueness is that you see, okay, 70% of your domestic fleet is government owned, so it becomes easier. But if it is privately owned, commercially operating, if that is to your region specific, then that NAP approach, you have to, go the other route and make some incentive for that. So highlight that uniqueness, that how you see what will work in your region, within your, so far what you know about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for this question. I think, from my understanding, that the characteristics of the domestic shipping is more or less the same. You mentioned and discovered by the report from Society. This is very useful report. And the only thing from my point of view is in Asia that the volume of the domestic shipping is very low because of the density of the population there. So as you mentioned, maybe Captain Singh mentioned what is how to regulate, for instance, the different part of this domestic shipping. I think it varies from country to country. So I have learned quite a lot from the report. Maybe we should go back, to investigate the situation in Asia. But I would like to say that come back. I would prefer to talk about come back a little bit to the first key topic that to be able to get the accurate information for the data for the domestic shipping. I think it can be defined by the territory and operating. The vessels are being operated in the coast in the domestic waters through modern technology like AIS. But I don't know, maybe some domestic shipping vessels they are not equipped with AIS. Otherwise, it's easier to get from the statistics. As you mentioned, the statistics is very important. And then follow back to your second question that we can find out.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, quick responses from Asia, Africa and Caribbean.
Thank you. When we look at the African region, it's also important to factor in that the region has 42 countries which are member states of the IMO, and also linking it to the fact that ports are owned by governments. This also brings out the aspect that there's a lot of regulatory mandates to governments, and they need to abide by the IMO conventions. This brings in the MAPOL Annex 6, as well as the initial IMO GHG strategy. Therefore, these are some of the aspects that set us apart. There's a big move towards efficiency, obviously going with the IMO MAPOL Annex 6, as well as the initial IMO GHG strategy. Therefore, these are the aspects that bring the uniqueness currently to the African region.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I would approach this twofold. In terms of uniqueness of the domestic fleet, bearing in mind that we're speaking in the context of our various regions, domestic fleets, I would categorize them as ships that operate and are fully owned and operated within the region, meaning they're owned by nationals of your country. That makes it a lot easier to regulate and to enforce in terms of regulations. However, we all know within our various maritime zones, we have vessels that operate domestically that are not registered to us and are not owned by us. So I think the strategies have to be different for the different corporate construct of these shipping companies. If they're owned and operated within your country, it's fairly easy. If they are foreign flagged and operating domestically, there needs to be a different strategy. If it's foreign owned and foreign flagged, there needs to be a different strategy as well. But the commonality has to be the decarbonization strategy of that specific region or that specific territory. So, I think it has to be a multifaceted approach, recognizing the uniqueness of the various countries and the region itself. So in terms of uniqueness of the Caribbean region and the different countries, it is very difficult because, as you know, the Caribbean is home to some of the largest flag states. We have significant offshore activity that is taking place. We host the largest cruise shipping industry in the world. So, from the context of the Caribbean, defining what actually constitutes and what is unique to domestic shipping, it is very difficult. And what we need to do is recognize that it will require various definitions depending on the corporate construct of the players involved.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So, if I gather that, so one thing is very clear that each region needs to define what is domestic shipping. And while defining so, it may not be just one criteria. You can have 1, 2, 3. So if you fall in any one of these, you will be considered a domestic ship. Okay, so that is important. The commonality is because once you fall in any one of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever categories we develop, then you have to comply with whatever is set up as a decarbonization strategy or whatever is the plan. They have to, push for it. And the second point is the uniqueness needs to be must be taken into account when you're developing this definition. Because if we say, okay, If you are state-owned and operating in state, you consider that it may not be fit, so you need to take into uniqueness of your country that or your member state as a member state that what is going to cover my domestic shipping. So as the example of the offshore facilities, the OSVs is clear that they may be flagged somewhere, approved by some other country, contracts are somewhere else, but you are operating with economical benefit within my waters. So I'm going to consider you as a domestic ship. So that can be very unique, right? So that is something taken into consideration. Now, my next question is also, I would say very personal on this topic of research as I'm interested, because I was speaking to a very small ship owner who qualifies as a domestic ship operator among all these definitions. And I said, why don't you modernize your vessel? He's doing short trips between the islands, right? So he cited some challenges, and one of this was a finding, right? He said, it's easier for me to go and get loan to buy, if I want to buy 10 cars or want to build a villa or anything, but I just want to put a new engine on my boat. Nobody gives me loan because they want collateral, the banks, right? So that was his way of putting. So my question again to each panel member, and very quickly, I would like to know, how does economic factors such as this, the limited access to capital, and again, they may not be able to, the ship operators or ports may not be able to go to the governments because of or target the budget allocations, because government as such have competing priorities. Do you think that is the case in your region? And how much is this a challenge of these economic factors, basically securing a capital which can go down, trickle down to the very small operators, which may be a major player in domestic decarbonization? Maybe we can start again from Africa quickly and move towards the left of the table.
Thank you very much. Once again, with reference to domestic vessels, looking at it from the economic perspective, again, bringing in the word return on investments, given domestic fleets in the region is predominantly by the government. One of the ways, although we also have some leisure crafts, which are separate from what we are currently discussing, but in the ambit of the discussions we are having, we look at it from the government perspective. There have been initiatives that look into the public-private partnerships to support the scalability of the efficiency of the domestic vessels, especially looking at it from the IMO GHG strategy. And these are some of the factors that the region has also ensured that it aligns with the Green Port Policy, almost akin to the National Action Plan. And these Green Port policies show as the way to how the supply chain also benefits, given the port is an enabler and huge human resource employment capacity. And with regard to additional ways that this can be supported through IMO cares, these are some of the examples when we are looking at it from the pilot projects that we shall be running, the pilot projects with the ports. The technology providers will be working directly with governments. This brings in the avenue of having a sustainable goal towards, say, Vision 2030, in line with the United Nations Development Goals. The other advantage that this brings to other domestic fleets in the region, not just the IMO cares jurisdiction of countries, is that the other countries get to borrow best practices. Borrowing best practices, it aligning to the public-private partnerships, the negotiations going on at the IMO. So this will also bring a new frontier towards, number one, employment, which is key, bringing in new technology into the region, and as well as implementing the new aspects of the discussed strategy that was during the MEPC, the previous MEPC must have been 82, I stand corrected. Yes, so these are some of the unique challenges and the ambitions that are there in the region.
Thank you, Lydia. Yeah, Lydia.
When it comes to financing anything, whether it's financing vessels or maritime infrastructure within the Caribbean region, access to loans is difficult. Concessional financing is a no-win situation. And that's our reality because in terms of any sort of bankable project, the region collectively amounts to less than 1% of world trade. How do you decarbonize infrastructure across 26 island states of the Caribbean if you amount to less than 1% of world trade? There is no economic justification for it. Concessional financing is just that. It's a loan that has to be repaid. So for us, the reality is not concessional financing. All loans is actually in the form of grants, is in the form of perhaps the loss and damage fund under the UNFCCC or other interventions that facilitates access to financing that is not hinged on economic sustainability. Having said that, there are pockets of successful domestic shipping where there is profits, where there is the opportunity to decarbonize with the implementation of new technology. But the procurement of that new technology, again, is going to be an expensive undertaking. And it has to be borne in mind the nature of Caribbean shipping, what they provide. Some of them, it is actual daily subsistence in terms of the transport of food amongst the islands. And a lot of the vessels that are typically targeted for decarbonization, they are not in this domain, so that's why in terms of the smaller projects and the smaller vision in terms of the IMO cares, this is really unique in trying to focus on, we call it indigenous shipping, looking at ships that trade within the region and trying to identify decarbonization strategies that is truly unique to the region, bearing in mind the scale of shipping that operates within the region. So financing will remain a challenge for Caribbean states based on traditional lending and borrowing patterns. And that's why it has to be revised, bearing in mind our contribution to climate change, as well as the impact of climate change to states and the region.
Thank you, Vivian. Before I move to Viran, I can already see the theme building about that. Okay, there is a limited access to capital, and certainly one thing is, again, a lot of the development aid which is available, the selection criteria is very complex. Each country, each member state may not be able to, and this is able to access that, and this is where the projects like IMO Cares comes and facilitate. And how I see this is also, as the point highlighted by Vivian, because we are small economies. We may not make a business case. And if it is not making a business case, it means for any private investor, it is a high risk environment to invest. And then if we have a project like IMO Cares, which supports a pilot demonstration, it means it reduces now the investment risk for any private operator to come in and look at it, right? So this is important. Yes, so let's move forward very quickly from the remaining three regions. How you see this, how you are overcoming these high upfront costs when it comes to decarbonize the domestic shipping.
Thank you very much. From my observation and understanding, actually, this is a systematic question. I think needed to be solved by the joint forces from the industry, in particular the government. I think when we talk about the financial cooperation, I think the most important is the owners, the operators, they can make the shipping as a good business so that they can be interested in this. And because the domestic shipping is sometimes very much different, because it sometimes covers different provinces and regions. That's why different the attitude, the willingness of the government in different regions may be different. So we need, of course, kind of market also. And the another possibility is that some ship owners do not know what is the good technology, digital technology. And in particular, what is the cost-effective technologies for GHG? So in such this, I would suggest that IMO Cares, we probably can involve some banks banking system, if you know about what is the importance of the GHG control and what is the cost-effective technologies, in particular, operated or supported by IMO. IMO is, of course, very much kind of authority.
Thank you, Iran.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it is a very important point you said that the sensitization and the willingness of the governments, right? So
That's
it's
right.
important, and the sensitization of the finance sector itself towards maritime is important. And it's a very up point, and we are at a very right waypoint, as I called in Voyage Plan, that we are having now Erwin from MTCC Latin America. I would like you to highlight what you're doing with sensitizing the banking sector to maritime.
Thank you. Yeah. This is that something like we are looking because we know now many companies require financing and how we can bring the support for the company. Because one of the important stakeholders are the banking sector, the private and multidisciplinary banks involved in this toward the decarbonization of the shipping. That's the reason that we make now one activities, capacity building activities to involve all the banking sector, regional banking sector, to understand what the IMO are doing according with the regulations of the regulation of and the strategy to reduce the GHG emission, to bring the support, the banking sector to the shipping companies, that they know how they can invest his money in the company and bring loan. This is that example of how we can support shipping company and how we can support the banking sector to know about the shipping industry. And the IMO also have the Poseidon principle. This is a good example that we take it to involve in our regions, all the banking sector, and get it how they can get the financial for the shipping company and also for the ports, because port as part of this engage of the decarbonization, shipping and port industry together. This is one of the examples I have to mention. All of you.
Thank you, Erwin. I'll come to MTCC Pacific. How's the situation with financing and some other challenges?
I mean, considering the proximity of where we are at in the region and the rest of the world, I just wanted to start off with, we have about 22 countries in the region. With actually varying sizes and also differing maritime capabilities. But a majority of the vessels that in the region are actually owned by private vessel operators. If it's owned by government, it's specifically for government development programs. So if there's a drought in a particular island, the government rents a government boat. But otherwise, all the maritime operations are actually run by private vessel operators. And I just wanted to go back on the do a reverse of the accessing of the financial. So to be able to finance, to be able to access finances with the banks, you must have proper financial management practices as private vessel operators. And that's something that is a big issue in the region. Because the bank will want you to say, how are you paying for your maintenance programs? How are you paying for your seafarers? And your books have to be in order to be able to access the financial loans or grants. So different countries, a lot of countries actually face that particular issue. You have countries that, some countries that actually receive grants and are also given new ships, but it's also the management of those, which is something that the country, the experience in the Pacific. The IMO initiatives help with proof of concept and everything within the region. But the bottom line, because you're dealing with the private sector, the bottom line is they always ask, who is going to pay for the transition into decarbonization? That's always the question that's coming up. We'll give the private sector, here's the IMO initiatives. Look, it's proof of concept. You can transition. This is the type of technology you want. But at the end of the day, the question that comes back from the private sector is, who's going to pay for it? And in our region, there's a lot of secondhand vessels. When I talk about secondhand, I'm talking about over 50 years. because it's actually, it's much cheaper for them to buy second-hand vessels. It's hard to retrofit those vessels to actually have proof of concept. And for us, the number one thing is to actually refleet and bring in energy efficient technology on new ships. But that's the experience that we're making.
Thank you. Thank you. It was, again, I mean, very, I would say, enlightening discussion very clearly. I mean, for the last 5 responses from the panel members, what I can collect at least from the last question is lot of solutions does not lie within the maritime. They are outside of maritime, right? So it means if we need finance, we need to, it's a straightforward example. It means we need to have some financial regulations and financial transparency so that the donors or the private investors are eager to say, okay, if I'm putting my money there, there is a transparency enough to me see that it is going where we want it to go. So there, and again, the issues of where, how we can have a fine line between the regulations, the private interest, and the impact, because you have to be very, very off as a small island state. Sometimes you cannot stop these vessels, even if you know that they cannot, they're not, you shouldn't be letting them to sea or they shouldn't be operating. You go with a very strong hammer of regulation, it will impact maybe the grocery prices, or next week the vegetable price in the market is going to change, you know. So you have to be very careful about how we have that balance, especially in domestic shipping. Unfortunately, we are very close to the the end, and before I open for question answers, very quickly, I mean, I request you very, very briefly, right? We don't want to stand between the audience and the coffee. So, very briefly, of your experience of last 1.5 years, can you share that how your MTCC, through projects like IMO Cares, is facilitating and can facilitate further such decarbonization initiatives of domestic fleet within your region? You know, I mean, because we need to look here, because this is not closing of the phase 1. For us, this is opening of a new chapter. Okay? Catalyst, right?
I'm more focused now.
Okay, see, so this is your chance. Kamal has already acknowledged that yes, he has wake up, he's taking notes now. So yes, so very briefly we start again from Africa and come to Pacific.
Thank you, Sanjay. For a closing question, that's almost a tough question, but we shall ensure that we represent the region best. And this brings on the aspect of cooperation and collaboration. Looking at it from the North-South cooperation, the IMO Cares project has been integral in giving the practical implementation structure that ports have to bring on board. And this also looks into the specific country needs and how they can develop further. So there is a positive buy-in. The member states are here, that is Namibia and Mauritius. They have been very supportive in terms of the government buy-in and looking at how this can support the sustainable development. The challenge that we have is that now almost all the countries in the region want to be a part of the IMO Cares, with the exact same structure of what is going on in Mauritius and as well as Namibia. We all know what the challenge is hindering us towards bringing all the countries on board. But we look forward to getting to a point where we can bring at least a third of the countries on board in the region. Remember, we have 42 countries. So a third is a sizable number.
I would say that's a good problem to have.
Yes.
Because at least now everybody is awake. They want to join this, projects of this nature. So that's a good problem to have. And we rely a lot on our MTCCs as regional centers to bring those member states to these platforms and where they can see actually. And I myself personally very happy to see this is the first time when the action is happening on the ground. I mean, we have invested so many years in capacity, and I think now that capacity has matured and is reflecting in the action on
Walking the talk.
Yeah, walking the talk, yes. Quickly, Vivian.
Yeah, so 2 specific partners, both of them are here in the room, National Energy Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago. They have been targeted as a beneficiary for this project and the opportunity for digitalization and what that could mean in terms of the possible success of that as a pilot, as well as the Port of St. Kitts and Nevis being here, in terms of the wind technology that is being proposed. Both of these, we've had the privilege of working with these two companies, government entities very closely. And I think it's a partnership that we are seeing during, as word gets out, the what about me question is arising. When is it my turn to participate in something like this? So I think the project has been very successful in operationalizing the partnerships, walking the talk, bringing the technology to the region. And I think we're all looking forward to that next phase, cutting the ribbon for the windmill, seeing the dashboard operationalized in terms of the digital technology. And most importantly, quantifying the reduction of GHG.
Thank you so much. Now I know the other three MTCCs, you were not officially part of the CARES project, but if quickly you have the IMO CARES here, the team, you have the audience. If one thing you would like to participate and if it happens again, what would you like to have from IMO CARES for your region? Very quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be very brief. From our MTCC Asia's point of view, we would like to say first that for ALDC and SID countries, I think use IT technologies. I think quite a similar to this one. We would like to, for instance, develop a general kind of a software or applications, and we can also, based on this general design, and then we tailor-made for each vessel. So the cost will be very, very much less than the others. So this is a good solution. The other one is, of course, the capability, the capacity building. In particular, nowadays people are talking about the capacity of the GHG for GHG competency for seafarers. I think this is very important for the LGC and SID countries, because not only for those countries itself, but also for the other countries, seafarers' competency for GHG development is very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're also happy for IMO CARES project to develop in the regions, like. But we understand we have to move forward also next time for the northern region, because we have many things to do in a specific region. One of the examples that I have to mention is we saw that infrastructure is a very important part to decarbonize the shipping sector, also the domestic, and also the data, the management of the data. That's the reason and this is in Latin America, developed one pilot project that we call Maritime Big Data Management Center. This is one example, real example of the inventory of the GHG emission that we have in our territorial water. In this first step in the Panama territorial water, that we know of operation of these ships, what they are doing when they enter in the Panama territorial waters, transit to the Panama canals, and what they're doing to the ports, what they're doing everywhere in our country. This is one example, and every day we update this data. And what we use this data to develop R&D, to use to the technical, to the policymaker to identify some situation that we have. One example, last year, we have accumulated ships in the anchorage area, and we saw the CO2 emission, and we immediately informed the authority, hey, we have a situation like that, and they take immediately action to do something. Yeah, this is one example that we have, and we can replicate it also. Thank you.
For us, I am okay in the region.
If you have an opportunity, yeah.
It's just that in April this year, we had a heads of maritime meeting, and MTCC Pacific had presented. We only have 7 beneficiary countries in MTCC Pacific, 7 out of 22. By the end of that presentation from IMO and the Pacific community, we had almost all 22 countries wanting to be part of MTCC Pacific, or wanting to be a beneficiary of MTCC Pacific. So for us, there's an acknowledgement that there needs to be a transition to decarbonization and to be part of the process. There's also acknowledgement that things to happen because our region, most of the small island developing states in the region will be greatly affected. Be part of.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, again, we heard that a lot is being done, and then the project like IMO Cares actually, the word, as it has been said, walking the talk. So we have this opportunity where technologies were shortlisted, then the beneficiaries had an position to select what suits their needs, so unique solutions as we discussed in the first question. So they selected what fits their needs, and now we are working towards how we can implement it. And certainly the two main aspects of these projects was the scalability, certainly. So if we can scale it up, and then the second is replicability. And this is replication is important because if it is working in, let's say, Mauritius or St. Kitts or Trinidad and Tobago, maybe it will work for me with some changes here and there, and then there's a solution, right? So the scalability and replicability is also something which we would like to see going forward in projects of this nature. So without any further ado, and looking at the watch, and I can take some questions quickly, and yeah, go ahead, please. May I have your name and the organization and the question?
Thank you. I'm Sahan Ali. Thank you to the panelists about the uniqueness of the domestic shipping. So I understand that you have a more closely relationship with the government and then probably going on the same ports, carrying the same cargo. There's also a conception that domestic shipping is more likely to get subsidies and then maybe access to funds like IMO Cares project. At the same time, because of your proximity, you might not be able to decarbonize without having your whole stakeholders and ports with you. So my question for the panel is that, is this uniqueness, is it a burden or a blessing?
I mean, that's a very fantastic question, I would say, and I will open the panel members. And once the panel, anybody wants to take it, and then I will share my opinion. I have a very strong opinion, and this is my favorite question. Anyone? Okay.
I think I'm being volunteered.
Oh.
I think it's a bit of both, because the country has an expressed high ambition with respect to decarbonization. It presents an opportunity to progress that decarbonization strategy through the government entities to become an example. And therefore, that can become a blessing. But it is also a difficulty if, depending on the political will of the country involved and their commitment to decarbonization.
Thank you, Vivek. And now I'll share my thoughts on this. I've been working with the SIDS for some time, and we always hear about this is a big challenge. The smallness of economy, smallness of size, resources, everything is small, is put in a challenge category. But I would like to pull this small and put it in advantage category, because my port is also small. So if I put 100 kilowatt, I'm the first carbon neutral port, nobody in the world. So this challenge of smallness, I think we can move it into our advantage, because even a small step is a big for me. It may be small for a bigger economy, but for me, the small steps are big. So I think we need to look through that lens where we can convert our smallness to our advantage, right? That's it. Any more questions?
Oh, you got it. I have a point to support what you've
thank you.
highlighted. In terms of the question that has been raised, it also brings about regional integration as well as cooperation within the MTCCs with how the governments operate and how they fall into the structure of the International Maritime Organization as member states, which almost equalizes all member states who are looking towards implementing the initial IMO GHG strategy. So it is a beautiful advantage. I will not say it's bad. When you look at it from the structure that I've looked at, it may be time consuming because of the geographical factors. There's time difference, there are times language barrier, but it all brings in the capacity building mandates towards the greater goal under the IMO Cares project. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions?
Just wanted to add,
Yeah, Adam, please.
just wanted to add that in the Pacific, we're trying to change the mindset. So instead of a small island developing state, we're trying to call ourselves a large ocean state.
So I just have a question for the panel. In terms of, the challenge with the pilot projects, do you think that the market is still in your regions, is still waiting for proof of concept? Or do you think that they're convinced because they've seen this technology elsewhere and it's really the finance that's at the heart of it? Or do you actually think that, they're also really worried about the tech working? What do you see in your regions in terms of confidence in the technology, I guess I'm asking?
Well, it depends on the sector. In the private sector, some of them have already moved and adopted technology that is available. Government sector probably not so progressive yet. There are pockets of it, but it varies really. And what we also have to bear in mind is that the capacity of the region to adopt new technology it's not uniform within the region. So you might have best available technology being implemented, say in the energy sector, but completely different for ferry services.
Yeah.
So it depends on the sector and it depends on the country, but from a region at best it varies. And in general, there isn't a lot of early adoption of technology. There is a wait and see. There is, especially from my understanding, especially of the energy majors, they tend to want proven technology implemented in support of their operations. So, it really depends on the sector within the region that you're looking at.
Very brief, I think, yes, in general, I think the technical side, I think we are quite confident. And we already have a lot of measures in our hand, but I would suggest that from IMO, I heard some voices actually, we need a kind of accreditation from IMO, about the technologies. And also, I suggest also the IMO cares, for instance, when we prove something, and then we should make a prolongation.
No, sure. I mean,
That's very
certainly,
important because we have put it into practice.
Yeah.
So,
this discussion is already on, and where
Yeah.
I don't see a challenge of buy-in. Buy-in is already there. It is just facilitating, and the project comes at the right time where it has facilitated that discussion to next step. And I am very confident that maybe 2 years down the line, you will have some of those questions again. You will have people traveling from Europe to small islands to see what is working, because these technologies will allow them to leapfrog.
Yeah.
They don't have to go through the cycle. The concepts have been proven, it is going to work. So, and working at a small scale and starting at small scale is easier. So if it is working, so certainly the more industrialized, larger economies will visit these places, that how is it working at a small scale, so we can also adopt it, right? So this is what I see.
I just wanted to add, for the Pacific region, there's acknowledgement that there needs to be a transition, but there's still reservations on the type of technology that is applicable for the region. Whether it's wind propelled or whether it's hydrogen, that's the reservations that's in the region, especially from the private sector. And of course, who's going to fund?
I'm rushing the meeting. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Okay, last input.
Thank you. And with regard to the confidence in the region towards the technologies, I'll base it on the IMO Cares case study. So the countries obviously knew the gap that they have in their markets, as well as the gap that they have in the nature of the technology that they're looking at. This was evident and it came out during the IMO Cares Technology Challenge. And the countries were able to work very closely with technology providers to see how best it will fit into their national mandate, if I would use that structure. one of the countries we are working with in Africa for the IMO Cares project is having one of its first state-of-the-art technical projects being implemented in the region. So there is buy-in to that effect, and there is confidence around that, that as Sunjit has highlighted, it will be actually one of the countries, number one countries in the region to implement this, and other countries will support. The technology providers are here. I encourage members who are present to also interact with the said countries and the technology providers so that you could see the synergy that is being brought in, most importantly, to implement the strategy, that's the IMO GHG strategy, as well as the MAPOL Annex 6.
Thank you. I will not say anything because we have gone over time. I will have my apologies with the MC later on, right? But this is a topic of everybody's interest, and I would say everybody enjoyed this discussion. I thank you all my panel members here, and thank you for you being patient with us. And I'll hand over back to Anton for any further instructions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Colleagues, we now move into the... colleagues, welcome back. I hope you had a nice coffee break and you're refreshed and ready for the final session. As I mentioned at the start, we're focusing on the second half, really on the technologies that might become the solutions to help decarbonize domestic shipping in the different regions. So we've had a very nice kind of regional perspective on this broader issue, but now we're kind of delving much deeper into what are the technologies which are out there, what type of impact can they actually have, and leading us through the discussion, we'll have an overview presentation from Petra on the Maritime Technology Global Challenge. Okay, this was international competition that IMO Cares ran. We'll then be hearing from the winners of the Global Challenge, so the technology companies themselves. They're going to introduce their technologies and talk about how they might be used in the different regions which have been working with CARES. Then we'll finish the day with a final panel discussion, and we'll be hearing from countries in the region talking about what are their priority technologies. You know, they've been very closely involved with CARES, especially through the Global Challenge. So they've already gone through the process of thinking about what are their particular needs at their local ports and on their domestic vessels. So it's to get a kind of perspective from them on what are the most suitable technologies and how they can actually be implemented in the region. So with that, let me introduce Petra to provide the overview.
Thank you, Anton. So before we hear from the technology providers, I'll just give a very brief overview of the IMO Cares Global Technology Challenge, just 2 slides, to provide some context for the upcoming discussion. So the Technology Challenge, a competition called on technology providers worldwide to contribute decarbonization solutions for domestic shipping in Africa and the Caribbean. Here is the timeline. Identification of participating countries and their specific technology challenges in September 2023. The challenge was then officially launched in November 2023, inviting companies to submit their decarbonization technology solutions. The submission period closed in January 2024 with 21 solutions submitted. And in April 2024, the winning technologies were announced and selected providers received funding to develop the detailed technical proposals. And just a few more details about the relevant stakeholders taking part in the challenge. As part of the challenge, 4 countries were selected through an open process: Namibia and Mauritius in Africa, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. And in terms of the winning technologies, a diverse range of technologies was evaluated by a panel comprising representatives from maritime technology cooperation centers, academia, pardon me, academia and industry association. And the winning technologies included wind turbines, shore-to-ship power supply systems, and port-call data sharing. And the winning providers are now collaborating with MTCCs, with the care schemes, and mainly with local stakeholders to develop detailed technical proposals, which will be completed in the coming weeks. And these proposals are then expected to be implemented next year as a part of the IMO and the European Commission GMNT project. That is all from me, and we can hand over to the technology provider. Thank you.
Thank you, Katia. So some of the details there on the global challenge, and yeah, I mean, first of all, for the technology providers that participated, a huge thank you. We had 21 submissions, really quality submissions from all over the world. And from those 21, in consultation with the countries, with other experts, we were able to identify 3 winners. And so I'm very happy that we've got the 3 winners with us today. And let me introduce the first of those winners, Mr. Michael Bergman from Bergman Marine. Please,
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm in IMO since 2004, so I know my way around here. First time as a participant of an elected provider of information. When I was invited to join the IMO Cares Challenge, we looked it up. We have these online sessions. Actually have something to offer. What we do, you will see, is digital ports, digitalization of ports, in order to improve efficiency and reduce emissions. So next slide, please. Where we are coming from is from smart shipping. Since 2004, 2005, we are starting to look into options to improve shipping by digitalization, which we heard already today is a backbone of quite a few other initiatives. You need data in order to validate, you need data in order to collaborate, and you need tools and efficient operations to collaborate. For us, it's important that the technology we are providing need to help the organizations and not vice versa. So we're not trying to implement technology which then needs organizations to change. We're trying to provide technology which helps the organization on external, internal collaboration with hinterland and with other stakeholders in the port sector. Next slide. We have developed the concept over a couple of years, mainly in EU-funded project, Mona Lisa 2, and the STM validation project of Port CDM. I'm actually coming from aviation. I was working in aviation, software engineering since 1990. Aviation, you have airport collaborative decision-making to streamline operations of airlines and of airports. And we have moved it over to port as Port CDM, and have validated that in various projects. Faster turnaround time, just-in-time operations, almost what you see here are buzzwords also on the maritime side, which are supported by the system. Next slide. What you see here are a few slides from the system we have implemented. It's called Perseus. And it's a platform which supports the international EALA standard S211 port call message format. It is based on the concept of the Maritime Connectivity Platform, MCP. It's utilizing software as a service, which we thought is especially for those countries in question. Plus, you do not need to install servers, you do not need to install and maintain hardware, access, and cloud-based data storage. You see what you see here are actually screen prints. You see the ports, you see the information. You can organize your port call. You can organize your tugboats, your other things, what you have, assets you have in the port with everybody involved. Next slide. Another screen, berth utilization. Which berths do you have available? How is the utilization? So you can optimize that and give all involved parties information when is which ship to be expected. Next slide. In the STM validation project, Sea Traffic Management Validation Project, we have actually executed in 13 ports in Europe. The project implemented the concept of port CDM in 13 ports and have validated the greenhouse gas reduction we have seen. So we have between 5 and 10% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in those 13 ports, which were small ports, medium-sized ports in Europe. So we have validated that already. Next slide. We have also seen what and validated what the monetary effects were on the greenhouse gas emission reduction and on other savings, NOx, SOx, and so on and so forth. So all of that is available in the validation final report. You can see it online and download it and take a look at that. Next slide. What we are building during the preparation for the proposal is measurable results, KPIs we want to implement. So we had been visiting Trinidad, we had been visiting Walvis Bay in Namibia. And what you see here are examples of the KPIs we have developed together with our partners. What is important for us is that we are looking for partnering with the local organizations and they build the KPIs. We as service providers don't build the KPIs. They are building the KPIs and we are managing that. So it's not influenced by us, we are supporting them. Next slide. That is just a short slide on how PERSEUS works. We have certain aspects of PERSEUS which are within the scope of the IMO Cares technical proposal. We have other add-ons which could be added at the next steps like maritime single window and so on and so forth. Next slide. And with that, 2 slides from our visit in the 2 countries. The center in Namibia on the top left, operational center, and the port in Trinidad. Thank you very much.
Michael, thanks so much. And when we have the panel discussions, we'll have representatives from Trinidad and Namibia, so we can go into a bit more detail about how the technology might be applied in these countries. But thanks very much, Michael. So what I'd like to do now is invite Isabella. Isabella's from Clean Marine Shipping, and Isabel, you know, one of those technology companies that went through the CARES challenge and is now working with CARES and local stakeholders to potentially implement this in the region. Over to you, Isabella.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to IMO Care team, to the whole Mauritius team, and also MPCC Africa, who has been amazing in welcoming us in this project to your countries and trying to make this project together. I'm Isabella Tatu. I'm the co-founder of Clean Marine Shipping, and here with my co-founder Nicholas Abson, who is the technical brain of the technology, and he's going to take the questions later on. So we are here on, we can go to the next slide, please. So we're here to introduce you to our technology, which is we're actually taking circular bio-derived fuels and using hydrogen fuel cell technology to convert it into electricity. So who is Clean Marine Shipping? We are a technology company specialized in fuel cell, particularly alkaline. And why alkaline is because essentially it's easier to create the largest electrodes. And we're using the source as the waste source, as a bio-derived fuel. So any organic waste around can be used to convert it into energy. The technology is patented and is exclusive for maritime industry. This is the uniqueness of our fuel cell. The most important thing is modular, which means it can be implemented on board of the ship, on barge, on shore, anywhere. As I said, it is alkaline, so we have the largest electrode. The team, which is run by Nicholas, is building right now 1 by 1 square meter. The next phase will be 3 square meters, and so on, which makes it very feasible for the maritime application. Besides the fact that the fuel cell is very robust and has over 10 years period, it has also a lot of advantages as it generates heat and water. I can have the next slide, please. So we did a bit of analysis that during the visit in preparation for our report, just an idea of what the waste in the country, how that can be utilized. And I would like to refer it a bit to the discussion before from the panel when Lydia mentioned that Mauritius has a very high action plan in place. So I can say that they have two big, the National Conference on Circular Economy and Action Plan, which is really well phased how they can terminate the coal by 2030, how they can reduce the emission, and so on. And one of the big things is also the waste. They are looking at a very high level. So for us, we look as domestically what the country has produced, how we can use that waste to generate extra electricity. So how our technology works, there are 3 phases. One is the waste to gas conversion, then gas to hydrogen conversion, and hydrogen to electricity. To have an idea, the technology can be fit in a 40-foot container. So the goal of our project for Mauritius, there are 2 parts. One is we want to power the port, so we convert the municipal solid waste into clean energy, implement cold ironing, and ultimate to provide cold energy to the ships. The second part of the project is the technical and economic development, which looks at developing the skill, creating local manufacturing enterprises, and in long term, building the economy, helping the economy better. So how are we going to do that with the impact? We're looking at again at 2 ways, the emission reduction and a future technological introduction. So from our system, which I will go later on the next phase, our system is expected to reduce the overall greenhouse gases by 1 ton of CO2 per day. Will also generate revenues from the byproducts. And in the long term, we will look at further technologies, as Anna just said, implementation to integrate into our technology. So we're looking at the 4 phases as a long term. Of course, as part of this pilot, we'll be looking at the phase 1, initial system establishment, scaling, maritime integration, and the long term, the bunkering and maintenance. So in the implementation process, we will be looking at creating a facility which we use to translate to 2.4 megawatts per day. We have the goal after the discussion that has the last few days to increase it to have it a much higher capacity. We'll be looking at that. And we'll be looking at scalability, because this is one of the project scalability recovery. Hence, we'll be looking at expand this facility next year and so on. So just to give you a very system overview with the steps for the first plan. So the first system configuration includes a 40-foot container, which will be located by the port, which has particular technology processes like a gasifier, gas conversion, separated aluminum hydrogen reactor, fuel cell, while the second container will be located at the waste location, where by using the macerator and palletizers, we will compress the waste and we transport by pallet to the other container where we produce the electricity. So we estimate the system will take approximately 18 months. which were the ones needed for testing. Of course, as I said, we're looking at increasing this, so we'll be looking at creating an extra megawatt plus another year, and by year 3, maybe 5. So as part of the project, what the system can deliver, we're looking at electricity, we're looking at the byproducts, which is the water, biochar, the dry ice, and of course the CO2 reductions, and that is assessment of the municipal solid waste. So as a summary, with our technology, we expect to reduce the cost, job creation, environmental savings, and of course, electricity creation. That is for me. Thank you so much.
Isabella, thank you so much. And I'd like to invite the last of our technology providers. So Professor Tariq Ozkul, CEO of SIGTEC, to talk about work that he's been undertaking with the global challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're entrusted with this decarbonizing, it's important. So thank you very much for this. We work with wind turbines, especially vertical axis wind turbines. This is how it looks.
Professor, you might have to raise your voice a little bit. Sorry.
Like. I blame Captain Sick for this. I had a video, but it said 6 minutes, so I didn't do it. So we have a patented innovation on vertical axis wind turbine. What we do, we close the wings of the turbine in such a way that it turns into a utility. So we call this technically storm protection. So what is the effect of storm protection? Well, this is what happens to wind turbines after a serious storm. Regardless whether it is a horizontal axis or vertical axis, we all need storm protection. Well, why is it so important? Well, IEC rules dictate that we build our wind turbines in a way that withstands storm velocities of up to 200 kilometers per hour. So we build our wind turbine, typically they start generating at 10 kilometers per hour and cut out at 90 kilometers per hour, but then we need to be able to withstand 200 kilometers per hour. Now the problem is wind power is proportional to the cubic power of wind speed, V to the power 3. So this is an enormous power increase as the wind speed picks up. So in short, you need to make your wind turbine 20 times stronger than operational, what is needed in operations. Okay, so what we do, we close the wings of the turbine, it turns into a utility pole, then so that we can increase its storm resistance. Well, this translates into reduced weight. So SIGTEC turbine is almost 1/10 of the weight of a classical turbine because structural strength requirement is much less. Well, also the foundation is very important. In a classical wind turbine, we use flat-footed foundation, and that means hundreds of tons of concrete and steel. Whereas in our case, SIGTEC use screw pile foundation. So essentially, you screw a hole in the ground, and you put the turbine in, just like the way we use in erecting utility poles. What else? Well, our technology is modular, scalable. You can scale it up, put on top of it, stackable, so you can increase the power like this. It is bird friendly, it is quiet, it's neighborhood friendly, it's easy to transport and easy to install. So most important is neighborhood friendly technology. So how do we use it in St. Kitts Harbor project? Well, the island's power comes from diesel generators. Okay. So we use clean power to decarbonize the port energy needs. So this is the model that we are proposing to use. It's a two-stage SIGTEC turbine. When it's in closed mode, in folded mode, we call it, it's like this, it becomes a pole. And we're also adding a tilt down mode, where in the tilt down mode, you just lay it flat on the ground. This is the port building, how it looks like. If we put it on the backyard of the port building, this is how it would look like. And if we close it in storm protection mode, this is how it would look like. And in the tilt mode, tilt down mode, it would look like this. So essentially it will disappear from the sea in the tilt down mode. Tilt down mode. So if we use it in 3D view mode, this is how it would look like. Continue. And there is an alternative site near the port on a hillside, so hilltop. So if you put it on that hilltop, on that alternative site, this is how it would look like from the port. And this is how it would look like in 3D view. So how do we measure the carbon reduction? Well, we are proposing to put a smart connection box in between so that we can measure the power coming from the wind turbine. We can measure the power coming from PVs, typical PVs, power coming from the utility company, and also the power demand by the port facilities. All of these we can remotely monitor using smart meters, and 24/7 we can monitor and record all these savings. Okay, so the decarbonization potentials. In option A, we propose to put a wind turbine and storage. And that would meet 46%, almost half of the need of the port. And that saves 140 tons of CO2 equivalent annually. In option B, we propose to put an additional PV turbine plus PV and storage, and that would meet 100% of the need of the port. And that would save 307 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent and makes the port carbon neutral. What's the scale-up potential? Well, we believe we have a great scale-up potential. We can use our turbines for offshore wind. So I showed you the onshore problem. And offshore, it is also very much suitable. We have a very innovative, stable floating platform design where the wind turbines will not tilt. This is the way typically the wind turbines tilt when the wind hits. So this will not be, it will be a floating turbine, but it will not be tilting. So you can densely put it, and this is a nice application. Another application is district heating and cooling, and that's a great application as well. So you can use direct wind to heat technology for converting wind energy into climatization, cooling and heating. And that offers you natural heat storage, energy storage. So this is something quite nice. And with the 200, it's already studied, the 200 kilowatt wind turbine will generate enough heating and cooling for 2,000 people if the capacity factor is 0.26. And 0.26 capacity factor is not something very great. Most of the European countries actually, they have capacity factor of 0.26. By the way, in St. Kitts, the capacity factor is 0.32. Okay, and that's the last one. And, this is a great application as well. We can use our technology as a modern sail for onboard power generation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is already a tested application. Onboard a ship, 200 kilowatt vertical axis wind turbine will save 38%. This is a 1-year study, realistic, from Singapore to Jeddah for 1-year study. Now, they couldn't make this turbine any bigger because the ship wouldn't fit under the bridges. Now, with our folding and tilting down, we can generate megawatt level power on board the ship, and then we believe that this will save a lot of fuel. With this, we believe we can make it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tarek, and thanks to our other presenters. So I think now we start to get a bit more of a feel about what are the technologies, what are their potential, and a point to make is that there are a multitude of technologies out there, and it's not to say that one is better than the other, but the point to emphasize is that some technologies are more applicable for some countries and some ports compared to others. And we've seen with these presentations how diverse the different technologies are. and whether it's port call optimization and data sharing, which is more relevant for larger ports in Namibia, or wind turbines, as we've seen for a smaller island in the Caribbean, or hydrogen fuels generated by waste, which is potentially very applicable for Mauritius. These are the options which countries have to consider. So it depends on the size of your port, it depends on the frequency of the shipping traffic, the types of vessels which are visiting ports. It depends as well on what type of energy infrastructure the country has. You know, what kind of energy supply does the port have? Does it already work off of renewables, or is there potential to introduce different technologies like wind turbines? So when we designed the Global Challenge, we were always hoping that we have a diverse example of different technologies. So we were very happy that when we came to the winning technologies, you know, we really were able to kind of show the potential of what's out there and the impact it can have. So thanks again to the presenters. Now we have the opportunity to hear from the participating countries. So I'd like to invite colleagues from Mauritius, from Namibia, from Trinidad and St. Kitts. Please join us at the head table for a panel discussion. So we have Mr. Niraj Raguput. I hope I pronounced that okay. Probably not. We have Mr. Stefanis Garasev from Namport, Namibia. We have Miss Michelle Scipio Hossang from National Energy, Trinidad Tobago. And we have Mr. Sean O'Garrow, the St. Christopher Air and Sea Port Authority for St. Kitts and Nevis. Welcome, colleagues, and thank you.
And me again.
And
we had a nice coffee, right? And we saw the presentations. I mean, each one of them is a significant step closer to decarbonization as we started. So again, I will, looking at the time, I would say we will straightforward jump. We know the panel already. So they all represent the very key element of this chain, which is the technology beneficiary. Now, it may sound as something like, the word is technology beneficiary, but this whole transition is incomplete without their role, right? And they have to look into the, I would say, appropriateness and awareness, and why did they select this specific technology, because they played a role in selecting each one of them. So first of all, I welcome all of you, and thank you for participating in this and playing that active role in selecting these technologies. I'll start with a very basic thing, which is, and I will need a response from all of you, that how as a port, you stay informed about these new technologies, trends, and what approach you generally use in evaluating. I'm sure like a lot of people would be coming every day to you. I have the solution for your problems, right? The tele thing, people advertise. So you are hearing a lot about. So how you keep abreast with all the new developments, and how you evaluate whether it is suitable for you or not. What factors you consider. So maybe we can start from St. Kitts and we go together. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Captain Singh. First of all, let me say thank you to IMO and IMO's program, so that St. Kitts has benefited, so to speak, from being a recipient of new technology for the port of St. Kitts. We stay in touch with the latest technology through what's published in journals, what our governments talk about in their conferences and webinars, etc. Even to IMO Cares, because we got us together last year for a session here in the UK, and through roundtable discussions and after meeting deliberations, we understood or widened our scope as to what's out there in terms of technology to reduce carbon emissions in ports. So we are well informed, and we kept networks with persons in and around the industry as to what's available. How do we evaluate the technology? We look at our operations, because our operations tend to be unique. We operate two ports, cargo port and the cruise ports. We also have tanker terminal. So it will look at the operations, we look at what the technology can provide, we look at its suitability to our operations. One, so it must be suitable, it must be readily available, and it must be affordable, because cost is a factor both operationally and return on investment for future. And yes, we have to measure the reduction in greenhouse gases, but we found that not every technology presented is suitable for our operations, like we said earlier, and that's how we evaluate it. And then we make a choice going forward.
Thank you. Yeah, Michelle.
And I think that's the sentiments very expressing the gratitude of our gratitude of national energy for the opportunity to participate in advocates. Our ports, and I would say Trinidad and Tobago's 30 port facilities, and actually just about 10 harbors, but broken up into 30 port facilities. National Energy actually controls, the group controls 3 of those ports. And so our span is pretty wide. So we have a lot to consider. And each port has a different purpose. It's very special purpose ports. So we have come up with a pretty much a matrix of what the criteria we use to shortlist and assess projects. One is the environmental impact. How is that going to affect our carbon footprint? The second one is our economic feasibility. As we said, nobody's going to put money into something unless they're convinced it balances off environmentally and economically. Technically, it's technical feasibility. We also get stakeholder buy-in. We've spoken a lot about that yesterday. Stakeholders are not accepting what we bring, we're not going anywhere. And the last criteria we use to pretty much assess what we're doing with our technology is the readiness for regulations. And those pretty much are five criteria we have determined should use for assessing new technology.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you once again for inviting us to be part of this particular event. From a Namibian perspective, obviously, we keep abreast of this type of events through gatherings such as these. Member state, obviously, Namibia is part of a host of other international organizations through which we actually keep abreast of what is happening around us and what type of technologies that are out there that we can adopt. If we bring it closer to the Namibian Ports Authority, and aligning that to what we as a port want, there are actually 2 things that we look at. Is it part of our strategy in terms of what we want to achieve as a port? And particularly this particular project that we are looking at leads to 2 areas where we as a port are particularly interested in, and that speaks to our digitalization drive as a port. And secondly, it speaks to our sustainability drive. So it aligns to those 2 areas as a port that we want to actually leverage on. And in terms of port efficiency, as a port, we want to be the best performing ports in Africa. And efficiency speaks volumes to that. And that's where this particular initiative actually aligns to that particular vision that we have as a port. And that's why it actually speaks to that, basically.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I would like to first thank IMO for giving us this opportunity reports every time we have program. Well, basically, Mauritius is small island. So we contribute only about 0.01% of GHG emission worldwide. So this is from where all our policy is now. So we will be investing more on adaptation, direct investment on adaptation technologies than on mitigation. And another criteria that would allow us to select a technology is the input should be available locally. like the sun, we are a tropical country, we have the sun. And also the technology should have, should be able to be a community-based program and whereby circular economy is being featured. Okay, so these criteria are basically used. Now, when it comes to technology selection, it's true that we don't have a, we go from what is proven, what has been tested, and what has a given efficiency. We are not risk takers. I told you, we are not contributing much to the emission, but still we are investing in policies to reduce our greenhouse gas contribution. And this is what has been reflected in our GHG commitment in the COP, Conference of Parties on the Paris Agreement. And every year we are committed to reduce our greenhouse gas emission. In this project, you see, we are going to use waste. We have problematic, waste is problematic in oceans. So that's why we such kind of technologies that we also solve our local problems. We are thankful to the government of Saudi Arabia for the funding that has been given to that. This breakthrough, we are able to have access to these technologies. Because normally for small island like Mauritius, you need to have a certain level of competencies and a certain level of access to certain kind of technologies. If you look at all these conferences when you are abroad, if you want to really go there, yes, you will build and the technology, but you need to have a certain kind of accessibility in terms of the competence and knowledge to be able to tackle this technology. This is where IMO is helping us a lot, especially when we see Africa.
Thank you, Neeraj. So, my question was again, I will just recap all the thank you panel members for the so if I summarize it, so it was more about how you stay informed about technologies and how you select technologies. So when somebody you look into the suitability, the affordability, stakeholder buying, then readiness for the regulations, future regulations, alignment with the vision of the port, vision of the country, and a very key point highlighted by Neeraj, I would say, because again, understanding your individual needs, you have to see whether you are going the adaptation route as a port or as a beneficiary, or you're going a mitigation route, because you may not be contributing too much, but you may need to build resilience because you would be exposed to certain things. So that is also an important thing. And again, so Neeraj answered it in a part because that was my next question, and quickly maybe, so I may put you in a point here that do you think your engagement with IMO Cares assisted you in this process of selecting and coming to, some solution where you can think, yes, you can take the next step now? Yes or no, you can be brief answer,
Yes, it's definitely. Yes.
Definitely, okay, sure. So I can see that definitely it helped you in that. Maybe I'll just expand it a bit and maybe we can start with Michelle. We understand the significant role of technology, in decarbonization, whether it is shipping, including ports, it's acknowledged already. But given the specific nature of your operations, the impact of outcomes certainly depends upon the relationship of, let's say, what is the relationship between the appropriateness of technology and what is the availability of technology. You may be thinking about a solution, but that solution may not exist. What exists may not be appropriate, right? So it's a fine balance in there. So describe maybe or share with us how you choose when it comes to between, checking this relationship between what is available and what may be more appropriate to you. A stage by stage or a pilot, or how you move.
That question points to why we are so appreciative of this opportunity, because you might want something, but technology is not available. You don't have a solution. You might find technology, but the outcome doesn't really give you what you want. And this is, you might give you partially what you want, and you find you're stuck in a box and invested. The opportunity here allows us to also have a certain level of collaboration, technical support for us to be able to really assess the value of what we're getting in terms of how it supports and aligns to our goals. targets and objectives regarding GHG emission and our entire carbon strategy from a company perspective. Technology is really what, as I said, so many ports and having to juggle so much. The technology is where we'll be able to see, get our visibility from a very wide space. And through the ports, through applying the technology to ports, we also find that we can broaden our opportunity to reduce our GHG emission from a maritime perspective. Because as someone spoke about, someone mentioned, your presentation spoke about the amount of vessels and how the tugs and how the inter-island ferries and all of that contribute significantly. Because we find that that's important scope 3 emission, and that's the largest emission. So the technology has really been able to allow us to see really into even a broader opportunity beyond what we even imagined. It helped us reimagine how we do business and how we're able to make adjustments so that we can really get the result. As soon as I came to London and I went to the I saw a vehicle, Uber boat, and it struck me. If we have an Uber boat, somebody reimagine another way to make the use technology, because Uber is really technology. Use technology to give a solution and a maritime solution from a transport. This is exactly what the technology has. We see the technology doing for us. And so it took us to a place, close that gap, took us much further down the road than where we would have been without it.
I would welcome any other panel member you want to add to this.
Actually, this also needs a solution oriented. Solution oriented. Now a problem is solving. Actually, we need to get the solutions also getting into another problem area. Solution, maybe more difficulties or other problems associated with this. How is it that is appropriate?
I think we can add some goals and strategies, because there's this buzz about greenhouse gas emissions, and in the same case, our government is actually running with that concept. As a matter of fact, just last week we signed up with the Glasgow Declaration in Nigeria for sustainability in the cruise industry. Because we're so aligned as a port to tourism and cruise tourism, then we must play a part in greenhouse gas emission reduction. And our strategy speaks to adopting technology, because with this cruise ships, even they're looking to reduce their carbon footprint by looking at fuels. What can the port add as a measure? So our strategy looked at cold ironing, providing electricity to ships calling port. So because we had that as an overarching strategy, so to speak, then the next step would have been adapting that technology to give us that outcome. So your strategy plays an important part. The support at national level, at government level, and our buy plays a significant part. And as our colleague says, collaboration is the key. So
Thank you, Ray. So certainly, I mean, the point I get from panel also is that there is a key balance between availability of technology. I mean, we have the perfect example. We had more than 20 technologies participate in the global challenge. Only 7 were shortlisted, and only 3 technologies we see which are being processed. So there is a clear what is available and what is appropriate. So that availability versus appropriateness is a big question when it comes to solutions. And Now, taking that further step, maybe I would like to hear for the benefit of everyone here is, what is your strategy? Maybe you can use a case study or an example, not maybe this decarbonization technology, maybe something else.
Yeah.
Where you adopted that, how you, because the key is how you create that balance when it is appropriateness versus availability. It means you're going to measure the effectiveness. So have you done it in past? And maybe you can share an example with us, or how do you measure that effectiveness of the, or evaluate the effectiveness of the proposed solution?
Look, we've got set targets as a country in terms of, not as a country per se, but as a port in terms of what we want to achieve, both from an efficiency perspective and also from a carbon reduction perspective, right? So we've got that baseline information that we're working with. So ultimately, with the implementation of the technology, it should actually help us to see whether we can be able to actually achieve those targets that we set up, that we set ourselves, both from a carbon perspective and also from a efficiency perspective for the port. So that's actually what we're looking at ultimately. I don't know the actual numbers that we can attain as part of the pilot project implementation, but if we see that there are obviously at time frames throughout the implementation phase to see at snapshots whether we are on the right track, there is always an opportunity to actually revert back and see how best can we further utilize the technology to actually give us what we want ultimately at the end of the day. So yeah.
In our case, at Portis, we had an issue with the helping companies. I mean, they were doing it the traditional way, cleaning the vessel and everything being thrown in the sea. So we decided to ban this activity because of the risks that it would pose. So we were going for a ban. Then the operators, they came up with technological solutions. We had to work with them because they had to change the equipment, the whole thing they were using, into making that mode like a capture and destroy system where they can capture all the biofouling and clean it and destroy all the using a UV technology. So the technologies were there, but they were in silos. So we had equipment that could clean and capture the waste. We had pumps that could take the waste upstream. We have filtration system that could be used to separate the waste and the water. And we had UV system, I mean, like the ballast water system where you could treat it. So all these were in the shell. But then they started working on it, and all these technologies were integrated into this system to clean the hull. And this was it went well. They were able to do it. Then we on our side, we had as a regulator to make sure that these equipment are tested and approved. You cannot operate any equipment in the port without approval. So then we had to devise a whole set of testing criteria, monitoring, using divers, using capture efficiency tests, like that. And this is an experiment that we had, and we saw that where there's a will, there's a way. Of course, they were driven commercially to maintain the business, and we were driven environmentally. So this is where technology and our concern were came together, and we had a good success story.
Thank you. I mean, that's a good example to bring forward. And so if I extend, and maybe Sean and Michelle, you can answer this one. So when you have selected a technology, evaluated, you see it will benefit you, you have brought it on board. Now, what are the main challenges you see when maintaining and scaling up these technologies? And you can take, I'm sure, in past years, you have taken a few technologies on board or seen coming in. So what are these main challenges when it comes to now, okay, test drive is good, now let's hit the highway, but what are the main issues when you hit the highway?
So, maybe it's about 2 years ago, as I said, we own and operate ports, we own and operate vessels, we need to have both industrial estates. we had to make a decision to purchase a new vessel. But it should be sustainable because when you make such an investment, the lifetime is 20, 25 years. So we know we have targets to achieve in 2030, 2050. So how do we invest in sustainable technology, but make it cost effective because electric vessels will 3 times the cost. And it would not meet the purpose, as we just spoke about the technology and matching the purpose, acquiring technology. So we have to work with the builders for them to come up with technology to allow us to, yes, we're using marine diesel, but the emission level, bring the emission level down. And the vessel builders we work with, they're able to install technology which use urea to reduce the NOx and SOx emissions from the vessel by 80%. You're able to also allow us the technology to improve the energy efficiency of the vessel, so we're able to use less fuel. Now, of course, it came at a cost, and we had to convince the board of directors to spend the additional monies. So we have to renew the fleet, and we got approval for the one, and that had to be proof of concept that the technology works. One thing we implemented it, we purchased a target today, it's working, we monitoring it. One obstacle did come out, which we indicated for, is you need the urea to reduce the NOx. And it's a specific concentration of urea, which we did not have in the country, and which had to be imported. So you found, yes, it works once you have all the inputs and you have everything well aligned. So we now find ourselves importing. This, of course, it's such a cost to import it, but at the end of the day, we're saying that we're achieving the reductions we want, so we are getting proof of concept, and thanks to the collaboration we had with our vessel builders. So going forward, we have an option for emission reduction with the remainder of our fleet as we go through the
But it's a very valid point. I mean, because we are looking at not only adoption of technologies, but sustaining such adoption. You don't want that you adopt something and 5 years down the lane, now you cannot sustain it. So that is a key thing, as you highlighted. So maintaining it now. So presently, if there is no urea available, then people excited about it, then good sign, you know. So it is not only
Ben zie geniş anlamında şey yaptım. Şey renkler değil.
Ben rengi takıldım.
Daimsin genişleri bak renkli böyle olanlar var.
we will remain on the topic of decarbonization. This also highlights because we are looking at the challenges. So certainly we have challenges of cyber security and other stuff, but hopefully it's not that serious, you know. But coming back to it, so scaling up technology, certainly, I mean, you have one tug which needs urea to be imported, and now if you have to scale it up, you have to ensure that you have that inventory. Certainly, that is an important point in all the options when you're looking at, like, okay, spare parts. If we have the technologies which we saw in the presentation, so they will need maintenance, they will need repairs, how that supply or logistic chain of the, those spares and those maintenance equipment will ensure that technology is working as intended. And that is maybe, again, I can, invite inputs from St. Kitts or Namibia or Mauritius. So how do you think that, given now you already are working on a proposal which have selected a technology, so what are some of the important elements you think you're considering to address this in your future project, which may be related to the supply, or maybe related to the maintenance, or maybe related to the scalability? Yeah. So are you already considering it? And yes, and can you share that with the audience?
Yes, we have actually looked at this part of, or we are actually still in the process of finalizing those final details in terms of scalability, ensuring that there is support beyond the project, obviously ensuring that there is enough training provided so that we can take ownership of the solution and drive it, and ensuring in terms of scalability, the fact that the solution can be further enhanced to actually cater for other requirements beyond the scope of this particular project is actually key. And there I'm looking at focusing on the area of how this technology can further be scaled to actually take into account, for example, the single window aspects of what can be brought onto the platform so that it can further be actually used beyond the life of this particular project. And that's what we're actually looking at. So it's not just for now. Yes, it will fulfill the requirements of the project for now, but what beyond that? Actually, we're looking at using the same platform to actually incorporate some of the requirements of the digital single window, for example, and therefore sustain it beyond that.
That's a good
point. Well, I'll just continue on the point of what Namibia has been saying, is that we can get up to implementation, and then the support after that is not there because we've had two projects in the past, one solar, and the more recent one, we were looking at becoming paperless because of COVID. And on paper, the project was exciting up to implementation. It was very exciting. And then the support seemed to have fallen away. And then we didn't have the right amount of input when it came to training and systems upgrade and systems maintenance, etc., etc. So what started out as a very exciting project, after a while, started looking like a sore thumb, so to speak. So to mitigate against that, especially with this, but one way to add it's a pilot project, and we'll have some support throughout a 4-year period. But what is essential is that one, we get people trained early. So like Namibia, we can take ownership of the technology and transfer it. Scalability is very important as well, because while we report to a small island developing states, I think that's in terms of size. St. Kitts, through this initiative, has the opportunity to become carbon neutral earlier than a 2030 deadline. St. Kitts then has the opportunity to be a trendsetter, which with the right support here will become. And if in being a trendsetter, everybody will be asking you questions and coming to you as we did in the industry, what we don't want or what shouldn't happen is that we're not able to facilitate the transfer of technology, transfer of information throughout the wider region for the benefit of the region in decarbonization, because we're stuck because we don't have the training, we don't have the collaboration or the continued collaboration between the technology provider and ourselves as a city. So we're making sure those dynamics are ironed out. We're going to continue to have collaboration internally, because while we can satisfy the external requirements, we can shoot ourselves in the foot with bureaucracy and not getting this done and not getting that done. So we're going to overcome all these hurdles. So once it's implemented and going forward, it continues to grow and be significant.
I mean, the points are valid, and certainly means from an observer's perspective or a facilitator's perspective, I can see that sustainability is very key in such projects, because I would, I can say on behalf of donors and I can say on behalf of IMO that we don't also want a project where 3 years down the lane you visit the port and somebody says, oh, this was a project 5 years ago and it worked for 6 months and now it is just we are not looking into that type, and that is where I'm so happy to hear this word from all of you is ownership, because if you take the ownership, then the project will be successful. We know that you are committed to it. Donors will facilitate, IMO will facilitate, MTCC will facilitate, but ownership remains with yours. Technology providers will provide you the technology, but ownership is yours. And obviously, and that's why you play a very active role in my opinion. Very quickly to the last aspect, maybe all of you, starting with Michelle, we can quickly go. So what do you think ports can do more or better to, I mean, so far we are looking from the beneficiary side. So you are at the end of the chain. But what ports can do more to, more involved and guide a process, or let's say, initiate these discussions and drive this collective action towards decarbonization?
With the collective, collaborate. You can't say that enough times. For resources as well. So we are not in one corner doing one thing, and the information is necessary for all of us. We have a lot of similarities. It's in Cape Trinidad, I'm sure Mauritius and the Islands. Let's put our resources. So I'm going to a conference, and Fusioners go to a conference. But it's the same information the persons might need to benefit from in the Caribbean. Client will bring those things to us. So we have the capacity building, it goes and it's expanding. And we, bring it to us and collaborate. Because after this, I'm sure we are looking forward, like Rick and I were talking about, we're looking to hear about the outcome of syndicates, because that we can see that being an implementable solution. Once it works for them, for us, the hydrogen shore power option, we have been looking at that as well, because we want to find a solution for shore power for one of our remote ports. So we really want to find a better way for us to share information, and I'm not going to have to go back. The lessons learned from others, I can benefit from that to take me so much further. So I would say collaboration for us and pooling of resources for better capacity building and better use of limited resources, and especially when it comes to funding.
Thank you. Neeraj, you want to share thoughts?
On our side, I think it will go about aligning our policies with the project, especially if it's a decarbonization project. Policies that would sustain the project in the long term also. And also we need also to consider incentives. Incentives, tariffs, bring tariffs to ships and everything else. This is what makes happen. This is important.
Incentives is the main thing. I mean, ports can certainly, because many places ports are also more like a facilitator. They have lease outs, they have operators using their facilities, and therefore it's important that they provide some incentives where stakeholders will engage with each other. Stakeholders will share that, or they push towards collaboration, right? So I would say, I mean, I'm just be aware of the time. So I mean, certainly if there is any questions which I can put forward to the panel from anybody in audience. Okay, I think everybody is just waiting, not for this to end. I'm not saying that everybody is waiting to end. Everybody is waiting for the lessons which will be learned from these technologies once they are implemented in their ports, and then we can share that among each other, right? So I would close on by saying thank you to the distinguished panel members. Thank you for sharing, and again, as I said, for us, from the project perspective, technology beneficiaries, you are not just, let's say, passive recipients of technology. For us, you are our partners, you are active agents, because of your initiative, you are driving this change. Other ports will learn from your practices. You're integrating, you are the early adopters within your region, so you're going to set some examples. So for us, you are the regional champions. So that's how I would like to conclude it. Thank you so much. And hopefully we can see these technologies working, in future. Thank you so much.
Again to the panel, and now we're right at the end of this session. We're right at the end of the day, and really there's just a few more items to cover, which is to do a summary and also to do a thank you, because putting this together has involved a lot of work from a lot of people, and always pushing this along and supporting this has been Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Transport General Authority. So it's been a big team effort. But if I may, I'd like to start just by trying to give a summary of a lot of the discussions that we've had. So on the one hand, we've had a lot of data input from our colleagues who've worked on the technology report. Okay, there's a lot of output there in terms of where domestic shipping is in terms of technology application, where it might go in the future. So I think that laid a very strong foundation for the rest of the discussions. We then had, I think, very strong regional perspectives from the MTCCs. What's happening in the regions? What's the priority for a lot of the domestic shipping? So that was, I think, very useful. The technology providers have given some examples of what's out there. And on top of that, it's not just what is the product, it's how can it practically be applied. And I'm looking at Tarek because the examples you showed and the potential impact that can have on a smaller port like St. Kitts, I think is very enlightening. It's such a good example of the technology impact if everything's put together in the right way. And that goes for other technologies as well. And then finally, hearing from the countries themselves, thank you to Namibia, to Mauritius, Trinidad, St. Kitts. It gives more a flavor of what are the local challenges, because we can very often end up with our heads in the clouds and think that everything is possible, and it is possible, but the reality is that there's some very big barriers. And those barriers are heightened in the SIDS and LDCs. There's a lot of country challenges, and that comes in the form of governments and what are priorities and where does shipping and decarbonization sit within government priorities. There are issues with accessing finance, which become very difficult in the context of small operators, and even more difficult in the context of small operators in SIDS and LDCs. These are enormous challenges. So when we identify the best technology for those particular operators, that's not even half the job done. The next job becomes, well, how do we access the money? How do we convince our government colleagues that this is the solution and it is worth pushing this? That's where the whole jigsaw puzzle has to come into play. So we've touched a lot on one aspect, which is the technology aspect. And it's probably the one that's most exciting and most positive because it has an easy solution, but it's only applicable if everything around it is put into place. We are one project and we are one part of that bigger puzzle. We're focusing on technology. We're trying to link technology providers with countries that want those types of solutions. We're trying to just facilitate the connection. For the rest of the puzzle, that's where we need a much bigger initiative. And there are other projects, just looking within IMO, there's projects that focus on finance. And we've heard from Latin America how they're looking to unlock more green finance to support these types of activities. There are projects that focus on training, just training, nothing else. And they're looking to raise the capacity of the maritime administrations, the port authorities, so that they can implement these type of technology activities. So we are one piece of the puzzle, and in our half day, we just touched on a very, very broad topic. But for me personally, the takeaway is that yes, there are barriers, but the solutions are there. And the potential of the technology solutions, I think, can be unlocked, but it takes that much wider initiative. Organizations like IMO have a big role to play. Governments have a big role to play to drive the policy. And the best thing we can do in terms of our project is just to link the stakeholders together. That's where we're looking to make the biggest impact. So, thank you so much for joining us for this half-day session. For many colleagues, we have ongoing activities. We'll have more internal discussion tomorrow. But for this single event, thank you to everybody online as well. And of course, the biggest thank you is to Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which has made all of this possible. And I'd like to ask Kamal to have the final word, if you have anything to say before we conclude.
That's very kind of you. Absolutely, it's a pleasure to be here, seeing you and talking to you face to face. If I really like to summarize or sum it up, I would like to take the first two words: coordinated, enabling. IMO Cares proves that if we are coordinated properly, we are enabled to.
That concludes the day, and thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.